Hello, welcome to the podcast of Startup Recruitment Failures. I'm Indra, founder and CEO of JobRely. We're building outbound recruitment SaaS and automating LinkedIn. Today, my guest is Justas Malinauskas, CEO and co-founder at Whatagraph. Hi, Justas.
Hi, Indra. Nice to meet you.
Nice talking to you. Thank you for participating. Maybe you could briefly introduce yourself and tell us more about Whatagraph.
Yeah, sure. So quickly about myself. So I've been in with Whatagraph, I think, already for like 9 years in total. Like if we would count in the idea time when it was born, but actually like officially we're like 7 years, and I think the last 4 years was the biggest growth for the company. So when we came out of like MVP stage and etc., and when I switched like to full time here, so it's like already the journey segmented.
How Whatagraph idea was born?
Yeah, so it came quite naturally as we owned marketing agency before. So it was more like visual identity and brand identity studio.
Mm-hmm.
To be specific, but some part of our business was also to create and run campaigns for the customers. And for me, it was like quite obvious because we were quite a higher scale agency, so we mostly work with bigger customers, bigger budgets, and bigger projects. So it wasn't like 25 customers per month, but it's more like 2-3 customers per month,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes even per quarter with who we work with. So it was quite demanding to deliver high level services, basically. So for me, reporting was also quite a high level requiring thing. So I thought like maybe let's try, combining really boring things like, website analytics data with infographics and showing instead of, I don't know, let's say 20% of bounce rate, showing that 1 out of 5 people leave your website within 10 seconds, for example. You just select what kind of sources you use. Then our system does all the work. So basically visualizes, suggests you what kind of data you should look at, and even automates that report sending to the customers.
I love it. I love when ideas born very organically, out of the things you're doing daily. And how big is the company now?
Company, people-wise, is about 100 people. I think
Wow.
a bit of over the 100. So it fluctuates all the time. With startups, it's like really hard to say the exact number most of the time. But yeah, so that's around 100 people for some time already. And in terms of the company stage, in terms of like venture funding, so we're post Series A.
Yeah, that's a really great story. I love it. And well, having 100 people company, I believe a lot of hiring you had. What are the lessons you learned?
Yeah, so hiring, I think it's the word which you hear all the time within the startup as the day one. And when you start this carousel, I would say it never ends, because I think there's 2 factors with that. So there is constantly, people which you sometimes need to replace because the company grew faster than the person. I think we're trying now to get rid of that problem and trying to invest more into the talent which we have, but also growing because you just need more hands and need more people to solve some issues. So hiring is quite a consistent topic already for us, like, I don't know, for a year or so. And I remember the first days when we were building this business, I remember that hiring was super fun thing. It looked like it will be nice that you're able to hire a lot of people and you're able to employ a lot of guys and girls, and that's quite nice. And eventually it becomes quite a thing for which you need a dedicated person then to just hire, and a dedicated person to maintain the talent, and a dedicated person to onboard them. It becomes with its own struggles. And when in our case, when we have, I think, nearly 20 different nationalities within the company, so it becomes even more things, because for me it looked really nice that we're able to hire people, I don't know, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Italy, US, and Australia. So that variety also brings a lot of new perspectives, but also it comes with a price, because you need to manage all different cultures and all different outlooks and views. But of course, that's interesting. If you have a problem, I think that's the thing what you need to work on. I wouldn't even say like it's a problem. So it's more like a challenge, or something like what people call right now. It's an interesting thing to work on.
Yeah, it's very nice when you think about the talent attraction, but when it comes to talent retention, it's a different story, right? You need to work more, and it's not as easy as to attract someone. So I believe you had some failures, and maybe you have some lessons you learned for yourself and maybe you could share with others. What are the key takeaways out of this experience you had?
So that's a good question. I would say in general, we don't have a bad, let's say, retention rate. So I think on the worst time when we were, I think the most failing after Series A. So we had even still like 15% only of churn rate or something of the employees. So that's still not much. And a lot of people we still have from day one. And I think we made a failure due to, a need of high growth. And, I think every founder of the companies most of the time do that. They start, reading some articles or talking with advisors and etc., which says, oh, just hire, like later stage people, from been there, done that thing, and they will, come in and they just will just solve the things. And I think we also did that. And I think that calls major, I think, mistake what you can make is actually, I got it as a good advice later from one of my friends. He said you shouldn't be skipping on the culture and values. And I think this is what we did. So we started looking at experiences on their LinkedIn's or etc. instead of looking at the people. And then we needed to actually separate the ways with those people which we hired and we believed a lot in them. And what we noticed, some people which we hired from, like really big companies and having tons of experience and they really looked nice and they were great people. But I think that the biggest problem was that there wasn't that much of, first of all, value and cultural match. And I think it's not about, like, again, that people are toxic or something. It's more about what kind of culture and values they like and used to represent and what kind of culture and values you have within the company. So in our case, we're super focused on the people who are more like hustlers, let's say, mentality. So it's more like they really are in love with owning things, first of all, and then delivering, and instead of having clear guidelines, processes, and etc. So in our case, in our company, of course we have processes and frameworks already, but they're still not that hardcore because I think everything starts with me. I think I really like the kind of decision freedom and owning the situations or parts of the business. And then when I know, like, I don't know, for example, our CFO, she for example owns finance, for example, so I don't go there and I don't tell her how to run the things. More about, like, she comes in and she owns that thing and she tells me, like, where is the issues, where is this and where's that. And that's freedom with a lot of responsibility and accountability. Actually what we're trying to switch now is to have a clear responsibility area for the person, but then we really want to hold them to account what they actually are doing and what they said they're going to do. So it's more about not having some kind of process and etc. and like a lot of KPIs for the people, but it's more about like accountability areas and giving that freedom to them. And I think you need to make sure that people are actually okay with that freedom, because there is people who are not really okay with the freedom, and freedom makes them go crazy most of the time because they just can't go and work in that kind of fashion. Because, again, freedom is actually way more harder than there is no freedom. And people think opposite, because usually freedom means you usually even need to work even more rather than less.
Right.
People sometimes mix it with a thing like, oh, freedom, that means, I can sometimes not show for work or something. But I think we're getting better in that.
But how can it be if you are a high-level manager? How can you expect that you won't be accountable or responsible for that specific area?
So I think especially in developing countries, I would call it even, we're still not that used to those things that much. And especially young people who usually work in startups, they're not that experienced being real C-level executives or even VP level executives, because most of them, they're like 3-4 years in their careers and they're like, C-level, for example. And I think they still look at that C-level more as okay, I've been there, done that for like 4 years, and I expect my salary to represent that and status within the company. But they still look at the job more like as a regular employee, just in a bigger salary. And I think they expect also some quite clear guidelines from the manager of theirs to direct them where they need to go. And I think what's changing now, I think it's super nice to see that, for example, in our case, some people who are in our company for some time, they are now being promoted to managers and C and VP levels because they've been in this culture for some time. They understand what kind of expectations do we have, what kind of expectations I do set, and they know that I'm not going to provide them clear plan how they need to act. We don't sit down and we don't do a clear week by week plan what they need to work on.
Could you give an example, like when you hired a C-level manager, and how was it going? Like, when did you notice that the person is looking for your assistance, even if they are a manager of the department?
Yeah, so I think we had that issue a couple of times. Usually they don't say that, but you can clearly understand it because people start to jump from one thing to another, and they start doing this and then that, and then one week one thing is important, next week another thing is important, and they're just like searching for the silver bullet. And I think, again, they look at the things from day-to-day perspective, and I think what is expected more or less from C-level and VP level, my point of view, is like the people are owning the whole thing, and then they're able to also translate that information to their direct reports, and then you just chunk the work into smaller pieces. So the head of the department does the general vision and strategy, and then there is people who do tactical moves, and then there is actual movers. So I think that happened a couple of times, and we had one position where I will not name, I think, the field, because it's quite clear, to identify. But it was not my direct report; it was other person's direct report. Person spent, I think, like half a year in the company, and later he left. And when we got to know why he left, so actually it was like, again, the case. It was for a bigger organization. He was used to having a clear actions which are demanding him to do this and that, and he wanted less freedom in kind of way of like making decisions, but more like clear directions where he needs to work on, and then what he needs nearly to do most of the time. So some people, freedom becomes basically a jail for them, and they just don't know what to do, and then they don't feel that they're moving to any direction.
But when you were interviewing them, I believe you told them about the challenges and what you're expecting for that specific positions. And why do you think there was a mismatch, right? Because I believe you told them what you expect. They also wanted to join the company because they will be C-level managers. And how could you don't understand this from the very beginning? Like, where's the catch?
Yeah, so I think all those interviews are still, especially in the startups, usually in earlier phases, you just hire first-time person. So they need to build everything from scratch. And it's really hard to ask the questions which you don't know yourself. And I think another thing is, like, everyone wants to look good in the interviews. And you just look for, most of the time, you just mention the people that, okay, you're going to need to do this and that, and then this is your responsibility area, etc. And they understand that, and then you don't go that much into the specifics. I never saw perfect, job interview process, because, either it's too lengthy or it's not informative enough. So you still need to bet a lot during those.
Yeah, of course. You cannot make the decision and to be 100% sure only by interviewing. But were those people from huge corporations, or why it's still hard to understand how, if you decide to be a C-level manager, how could you expect not to be accountable?
No. So it's not like they do not expect to be accountable. It's more like, the way how they like to work. It is the accountability, let's say, size, and the pace, and the expectations from the company. I think those are the things what limits you to understand those things, because especially when you hire from bigger corporates, I think it's quite tough, especially in the first times, because you have it in your mind, oh, this guy was in Microsoft for like, I don't know, 10 years, and he definitely knows what to do. And you just build that story for yourself, because of course you don't get applications from like 15 people who are, one is from Microsoft, another is from, I don't know, Google, third one is from Apple. And you just select. You just have one shot. You just see that the person might be a good fit. You have a chat with them, and then it looks like it's going to work. But then, of course, that person also doesn't know if that's going to work or not, because he never worked in a smaller organization. He joined Microsoft when it was big. It became even bigger when he was there, and then he just decided, I want to go into startup world, and then eventually that skill set developed within those organizations. It's a bit different with what's required within the startups. I think our biggest lesson is, again, like, not to look that much into, what kind of companies they were. It's more about like what you were doing there. Mainly day to day, not like in general scope. And then you can bet, okay, so he was managing 20 people, so maybe he will be able to manage 20. So I think it's super tough still to understand. I think you still need to go through those lessons, and I think you can't prepare for them. I think one thing was, what we never looked at is definitely the diploma of your university, because I never had the trust myself into that thing. And we never look at it, and I think it never defines it anymore within the startups. You can't tell you nothing. Except, okay, he was in I don't know, Stanford, so it might be clever most of the time. But still, this is that much what you look at. It's more like a selective criteria, but it's not definitely a main thing. And I think again, the companies where they worked at is also it can say something, but you need to know the bigger story. How long, when, why he stayed there, why he left, and etc. And because sometimes you can just sit in the big corporate, do nothing for 3 years, and nobody will notice.
Does it mean that you're not hiring people from bigger companies anymore?
No, so we still are not declining people from there. We just look at them the same way as we look at the people which we hire from smaller organizations. Because I think we just used to look, this guy from Google, he's definitely great. You just give him A's already everywhere, despite the fact that you even haven't been speaking with the person. So I think it's more about like, you still need to treat all the people the same and ask them the right questions and really be sure about the values and the personal values of the people, because those never fail. And as I think, if we hire the right people who really match our point of view, values, and culture, I think they can become great. And we have tons of experience of growing really people who joined like quite as juniors within the company. They were like really on a fast track to really high level positions. Of course, there is some risks with that. They don't have an experience or something, but I think experience is the thing which can be built quite fast. And especially within the startups, your knowledge, what you used to know, especially software startups, the knowledge which you had 5 years ago, it might be relevant already, and it is constantly changing.
Well, what about the stereotype that people working in huge corporations, they all have a structure or the strategy which came from the higher management level? How can they be free and able to create any kind of the strategy themselves then, if they're used so much to get it from someone else?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest, disadvantage of working in a big corporate, because you just start to be used to work in kind of processes and frameworks, because that's how you operate. I don't know, if I need to do something, I just go to this person. If I need to do this, I need to go to this person. So everything is done for you, and you kind of think, but actually don't think that much, I think. You just operate in some kind of frameworks, and what you require is discipline. And I think that spoils the people eventually, and they just don't know how to operate. I think it's the same, like, I don't know if it's a good comparison or not, but let's look at the nature. There is animals who are, let's say, born and raised in the zoo, and then try releasing them to the nature, and they just don't know how to find the food, and they don't know a lot of things. And I think the same goes with the people. If you spend too much time in the big corporates.
And you also mentioned hiring women, that you are hiring women for the management positions. Maybe you could share with the first hire, how did it go? Because it's a tech company, right? So were they welcomed?
No, so actually, we don't hire specifically women. So it's more like we hire people, and let's say at our case, it happened that they were women. So we don't look differently at that situations. And I think it went good. I mean, since the beginning, I can't even say that it was something different. I think in the natural way of organizational work, I think it's nice, because women usually brings a bit of a calmness and let's say more structured conversations, rather than sometimes ego or temperament play the thing. So I think that enables. So I think the diversity itself, again, if you go all into one side, it's also not very good, because then there is other issues. So that's why I think in the world where we were created, I think the way to operate all together instead of having groups, I think the mixed groups works the best. So I couldn't specify something like differently. accept that.
And Whatagraph team is very much diverse, right? So you mentioned 20 nationalities.
Yeah, I think we have all religions in the company. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
But I believe you still should have challenges. Of course, it's a very good combination and you can get great ideas, but sometimes the cultural differences gives you some challenges, right?
What I like about our team, I think our team is super, I would say, open to everything. That's maybe with the younger generation thing that, everyone saw the world and for you, it's not something crazy that you come into the office and, I don't know, you see a person with different color, let's say skin, it's just normal, what it should be. And I think that came from earlier times when it was super strange to see a different person in the street. Now, I know we have some people who are wearing some religious, let's say, things and
outfit, yeah.
Like there is hats and things and nobody's like, whoa, what's that? They all know what's that. They know why they're wearing it, and nobody questions that, and they just treat them as an old person. You just come in, you just hi, that's it. And it's not like you look at it and you're like for 3 weeks you can't stop looking at it. So we haven't experienced any kind of issues, or at least but usually all the things comes to my eyes and ears. If there is some issues, I think that's why we have quite an open culture also, that people are not afraid to talk to or me or others and to mention that there is some issues. So we never had some kind of, conflicts between people. So usually people mention that one of the top things why they like to work here is the people. So sometimes I was thinking, is it good or not that, maybe they should be passionate about the product, what we're building. But eventually I thought that's good that they work here because of the people, because you can't change the product, you can't change you can pivot, you can go to one side or another, and some people might be not happy about it if you change something. I started to work, in fintech, and now they started to sell cars, and I don't want to work in this business anymore because it's not interesting. But if you like the people who work around you, so I think that's super good, because you can do everything with them together. So it's like that story from child books, with my friends we can conquer the world and etc. I think that's the more of a thing. And if I would say that we invest a lot into that, we don't. We just let everyone be themselves. And I think sometimes you just don't need to invest that much into the culture and values and on all the jazz about it. It's more like actually letting that culture develop itself and help a bit to navigate, not to get to extreme, let's say end, but you just let it go and flow through themselves. And that's why I think we have that good culture within the company.
When you mentioned that you have all the religions in your team, in your company, I remembered because I was working in Bahrain, and there are like simple traditions like a month of Ramadan. So people are fasting, therefore the work hours for them are shorter. Is it easy to navigate? Because why one person could work not as long as another person? Did you notice any struggle in that?
So in our case, I think we don't have that, let's say, really super religious people. We don't have like, I don't know if it's extreme or not, but let's say it's religious, like, for example, there's Muslims who are, giving prayers more often per day. And so maybe our people are not that religious or something, but they're just coming from those religions. And if we have a case, when they need some special tailored thing around them, we're just happy to do it, and I think others are understanding why that's happening. It's not about that person is exceptional, it's more about we need to also accept if we're different. It's the same goes, some people need to go 5 times per day to the toilet, and some people need to go only twice. So then you can go in counting how much toilet time you use, but we don't do that. So I think everyone accepts each other and that we're different, and by being different we're also the same.
There are some companies actually doing that, counting time for the bathroom. The call centers, for example. I used to have this experience myself.
But I think they're not that popular anymore.
Especially in startups, it would be pretty amazing to see that in a startup. Okay, great. So thank you, Justas, so much for sharing your stories.
Thanks for inviting.
And thank you all the listeners for listening. And for more podcasts, please visit jobrely.com.